Hello everyone and welcome to our video for Lab 4. In this module we're going to be looking at troubleshooting Windows Server. So there's lots of different things we can look at when we're having trouble or looking to figure out the cause of an event in Windows Server, which is why we have so many different exercises that we have to complete this week. Now, luckily most of these exercises are very small and I don't think that there's going to be much more time involved in this lab than some of the other labs. So we'll start off with exercise 1. Exercise 1 has us identify an invalid logon in the event viewer. So what we need to do is jump over to our server. If you're already logged in, go ahead and log off. From there, go ahead and attempt to log in with the wrong password. Okay, so we see the username or password is incorrect. Then you can go ahead and log in with the correct password. And once you get booted up, we'll go ahead and go to Start, Administrative Tools, and open up the event viewer. So the event viewer is where we'll find all or most of our log data for at least for the Microsoft applications. If we look under Windows logs, we can see that it's broken down into hierarchies. And if you think about a login, logins usually have to do with security. So if we click on security, we can see all of the log data associated with the security log. Now, what you'll see in here is a bunch of audit successes usually, which means whatever was being audited, such as a logon or a special logon, completed successfully. But what you notice is, or you should notice, is an audit failure. And this happened at 4:51, so that was less than a minute ago. And this was for a logon. So this was more than likely our invalid logon attempt. And if we double click on it and then scroll down into general, you can see that the account name was for administrator. That's who I tried to log on as, and the domain is just our server name here. So we get the failure reason. We know that it was either for an unknown username, which wasn't the case. Administrator is a valid user, or bad password. So one use case of this would be if we were checking and maybe we had terminal services running and people could connect to our server remotely, and we could see a bunch of audit failures in here if somebody was trying to brute force the password, right? So then we would want to take action to try to prevent that from happening. Okay, exercise 2 has us look at startup programs. So sometimes startup programs can have problems in them, and if they do, it can mess up the boot process or the startup process of Windows itself. So let's go and look at how we can figure out what programs are running and how we can turn them off if we'd like to. So coming back in here, close out a server manager. We want to go to Start, Run, and type in msconfig. So this brings up our system configuration, and you'll see that one of the tabs here is Startup. So this shows all of the programs that are running or that are scheduled to start when you first log into Windows. So mine right now doesn't have a lot. If you're running a Windows desktop, you may want to try running msconfig and look at your startup tab, and you'll probably have a lot more things populated in here. Okay, so if we didn't want something to run, we could just uncheck it, hit apply, OK, and reboot, and the next time that should not start up. Now, you should note though, if you do run a program, like I just unchecked Microsoft Security Client, sometimes if I were to go and open up Security Client after that reboot, it may notice that it's been disabled and go ahead and re-enable itself. So just be aware of that if you do disable something and come back and later on it's been re-enabled. Okay, for now we won't make any changes here. Exercise 3 has you look at the system information utility, so msinfo32.exe. And we're going to just look through the data that this utility provides. We're also going to locate those startup programs, and it should be the same that we saw from exercise 2. So to do this, we can go to Start Run, MS Info 32, press Enter. Again, we get system information here. We get a lot more detailed, useful information in this one. So we can see like where the page file is and how big the page file is, total virtual memory, how much RAM is available, total physical memory. I'm sorry, total physical memory is how much RAM. Virtual memory is RAM plus page file size. Okay, we can also see things like the internal version of Windows 6.1.7601. System types, so from here we can glean off what the architecture is, 64-bit, the processor. And what we want to do is go ahead and find startup. So we can kind of explore around in here. And you see like there's components, so we can click on components and see like the CD drive. Is it there? Yes. Who made it? Blah blah blah. So what we're interested in is under software environment, and if you expand software environment, you'll see a node under here for startup programs. Looking in here is the same two things, if we were to go back and compare, that we saw when we ran msconfig. Okay, so just another way to get that information, also another way to get some other valuable information. Like here we can see environment variables. Alright, so exercise 4 has us go in and change our virtual memory settings. It wants for us to change it for the C drive and set the initial size to 256 megabytes and the maximum size to 2 gigabytes. So to do that, let's jump back over and we can go to Start and right click on Computer and go to Properties. So from here, this setting is kind of buried pretty deep in some different context menus. So we want to go into Advanced System Settings. From here, you want to click on the Advanced tab, and we want to go under Performance, and you'll see that Performance handles visual effects, processor scheduling, memory usage, and virtual memory, which is what we're looking for. So from there, go ahead and click Settings, and then on the Advanced tab, under virtual memory, so this is where our page file settings are, and what the page file is used for is when we run out of actual physical RAM, we'll start paging out pages of memory to disk or mass storage, which is a lot slower, although this gives us the ability to have more virtual memory than we have physical memory, which allows our systems to keep running when we try to run programs that utilize more RAM than we have available. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and click Change. By default, this is automatically handled by the operating system. I can't think of really many use cases where we'd want to come in and change this, but in the event that we needed to, we could uncheck that. The page file is stored on the C drive, so we want to look at the C drive and go to Custom Size and go ahead and enter our 256 and our 2 gigabytes and click OK. Okay, so those changes won't take effect until we restart the computer, so we'd probably want to go ahead and restart. We can come back in and then take our screenshot. Okay, so I'll just restart later here. Exercise 5 wants us to open up an instance of Firefox and then open up Resource Monitor and choose to monitor that Firefox process. And then take a screenshot of the open files used by that process. Okay. So to do this, let's go ahead and open up Firefox. Let's open up the resource monitor. So if you go to Start, you can just kind of start typing it, resource monitor, so that comes up. Let's see, we don't need to import anything. So Resource Monitor is a great program that lets us look at how different processes or different running programs are using the resources of the computer. So right here at the top we see Firefox. We want to go ahead and isolate to where all we are seeing is just Firefox, so we'll check that. And over on disk we can take a look at any of the open files that are being used. So Firefox has quite a few open files right now. It looks like it's dealing a little bit with that page file. We just looked at that. It's got some DLLs loaded, which is common for applications to do. See, we see some font files in there, some log files. Okay, so we can kind of get an idea of what all this process is using and what all is it accessing on our system. In addition to that, we can go over to network and we can take a look at network activity. So we can see all of the connections that this process is making. So we've seen some things with Amazon AWS, and more than likely this stuff right here is coming from when Firefox opened and it went to mozilla.org. So why don't we do this? Let's go to google.com. Okay, and we'll make this just a little bit bigger. So looking under TCP connections, we can see some of the TCP connections that have been made. One of them is coming from our local address going to this remote address over port 80. This very well could be us going to Google. So one thing we can do is we can come in to a command prompt. We can use NSLOOKUP to look up the name server for Google. Get some addresses back. 216.58.217.142. We see that here. So here is one of our connections to Google. And if Firefox was listening on any ports, like providing a server or a service to other applications, we would see that down here as well. So exercise 6 says you play with the performance monitor tool. Really, I just want for you to kind of get a feel for this. There's a bunch of different counters that you can use, so I want for you to go in there and add 3 counters and then look up and describe what those 3 counters are monitoring. Once you do that, go ahead and run an application and see if you can generate some data with that performance monitor. So to open up the performance monitor, we can just go to start and start typing perf, and we get performance monitor up here at the top. Looking at the performance monitor, so we want to drill down underneath monitoring tools to the performance monitor. We can right click anywhere in this white area and go to add counters. Okay, so depending on what we're looking for, we can kind of drill down through this hierarchy over here. Let's look at, probably not going to see much in the paging file, but we've been talking about it, so let's look at percentage usage and usage peak. So we'll add that for our page file down here. And let's see, physical disk, so let's try that one. Let's look at idle time of total. Okay, so there's 2 counters. Click OK. You can see they've been added down here. Now what we can do is we can go in and let's try to maybe create a file. No, maybe just make a modification to this one and save it. And we can see a little bit of data generated here. Maybe we just want to look at not the processor time. Let's look at physical disk idle time is our blue line. So what we can see is when I read that, it actually quit idling for a second as it read the data, and then it went back to idling again. Right, so this could be useful if we're trying to troubleshoot an application and we're not sure what's going on with it. maybe it's using the disk too much, or using too much RAM or too much page file, and we can kind of get an idea of that if we use the performance monitor. Exercise 7, this has us enable volume shadow copies. So the process is laid out here. Just want to go ahead and open up my computer and right click on the drive that we want to enable it on, which will be the C drive. We'll go down to properties and click on shadow copies. We'll highlight the C drive under select a volume and click enable. From there we can click on schedule and we can go ahead and set up a schedule for this. And then we can go ahead and edit some files and try to see the differences. So let's go ahead and try that. So let's go to computer. We'll right click on our C drive and go to properties. There's the shadow copies tab. And we see right now it is disabled. So let's enable it. It's going to use a default schedule at first. That's fine. Do you want to enable it? Yes. So we want to go ahead and click on settings and then schedule. And let's go ahead and create a new schedule that takes place daily at 10 p.m. every day. So we have all of our days selected. Make sure we have that. Every week we'll do it on these days at 10 a.m. Okay. Notice in here we can also set things like size limit for how much memory or storage capacity that our shadow copies should be using. So click OK. OK here. And let's find a file that we can modify. So let's go back into our inetpub from our previous lab where we created an index page. And let's go ahead and edit this. So we want to remove some data. Let's see, let's open this. Let's drag it over and open it with Notepad. And let's say we changed this to where all we had now is, maybe somebody came in and really messed up the file. And now it's just got HTML tags in it. So if we save that and then close it, now we should be able to go back and look at our previous versions. So if we right click on this and go to properties, we can go to the previous versions tab, and what we see is our last version here. So real quick, just to prove that this is going to work, let's look at the file again. We see it's just HTML tags, and then we'll come back in, properties, previous versions. So here's our shadow copy. If we click restore, we see that it's been restored to the previous version. And then if we open this up with Notepad++, we now have our file back. Alright, so this can be very beneficial in an IT organization as people are constantly deleting files that they didn't mean to, or losing files. And if you have volume shadow copy service running, sometimes you can save yourself a little bit of headache, or maybe help them out and make their day a little bit better. Okay, so for our last exercise here, we just want to go through using Windows Server Backup. This is a feature that we can add to our server, which we'll go through the process of doing. As a prerequisite, we need to have a second hard drive added to our server. This can be the ones that we had before, although I didn't have luck using those. So what I ended up doing was going in, and the same way that we added them before, I deleted those two that we had for the previous lab and then added a new disk. Okay, so you may want to go through the same steps just to save yourself any headache. I'm sure there's a way to reuse those disks, even after deleting the data on them. Alright, so if you need help going through those steps, please refer to the last video or the instructions on the last lab guide. Alright, so like I said, we need to install a new feature. So what we'll do is close out of that, go into Server Manager here, go to Features, and we want to go to add features. Down at the bottom, since this is alphabetical, we want to find Windows Server Backup features. So I've already installed this, but basically you'll click this box, it'll half check it as indicated by this sort of square within a square, and what you'll notice is it just didn't do the command line tools. Those aren't required in order to use that feature, and they're also not required for the lab, so feel free not to install those if you'd not like to. Once you have that half checked, you can go ahead and click next and install. Finish up the wizard here. After that's installed, then you'll have a new entry here under administrative tools for Windows Server Backup. So we'll click on that. Once that loads up, we want to go ahead and create a backup schedule. So we'll run through this wizard. In this wizard, we want to, instead of doing the full server, because number one, this is an example. Number two, there's times when you don't want to back up the full server. We can easily create the full server. We have an image that does that. Maybe we just want to do custom, just one directory or one directory and subdirectories like our web app that we've been messing with in the inet pub folder. So let's add what we would like to back up. Let's go to add items and let's just back up the inet pub folder. So when you check that, it also inherently checks all of the subdirectories underneath that. So we get all of these files. So we'll click OK there. Next. Let's have this scheduled for more than once a day. So we'll take 2 backups a day, one at 9 p.m. and then one at 9 a.m. Where we store the backups, we have a few different options. We're going to choose this first one, which is for backing up to a dedicated hard drive. Additionally, we could, or not additionally, but alternatively, we could back up to a volume like we created before, that S drive, or we could back up to a network share, so some other file server on the network. Okay, but like I said, we're going to go with this first option. We'll click next and select one or more disks to store your backups. So let's look at the available disk. So this is the one that I added. It's just 1 gigabyte. So we'll select that one and check it. Once you have it added into there, from there you click next. So when we finish it, the selected disk will be reformatted. All existing data, volumes and data will be deleted. Okay, so yep, we're good with that. And then we can click finish. Okay, once that's done, what we can do is we can go to backup once, and from here let's look at the scheduled backup options. So backup item is just those selected files on the C drive. There's no file set to be excluded. We have a destination for it. So let's just go ahead and hit backup. That'll go ahead and back those up for us. So it says that it completed with warnings, but it also says it was successful. So let's see what happened here. So we should be able to come in and let's delete some files. Let's go to the C drive, inetpub. Let's just remove the www root. Okay, so that's been deleted. We can go back to this Windows Server Backup MMC. Okay, so now let's go in and let's recover those. So we can click on recover this server. We can pick the date of the backup. So for us, we only have one at 5:50, which is 3 minutes ago. Files and folders. And if we drop this down, we can see exactly what we have backed up. And what it is that we want to restore is basically this www root folder that we deleted. So if we click on inetpub, over here we can highlight what it is we want to restore. So if you wanted to restore multiple things, you could just hold down Control and select the ones that you want. We just want www root. So click next. Here we can restore to the original location or another location. So for us, we want to do original, but if we wanted to make this restore and be able to compare those files at this point in time to what they currently are, we may want to put them at another location. Okay, so we'll click next and recover. Alright, so once that's done, we'll see that it's completed. We can click close. And then if we come back, go back to the C drive, inetpub, www root, we have our files back. Alright, so I hope you enjoy the lab. If you run into any problems or have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. If not, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.